Let me start by asking you about what we've seen in terms of NATO response to the Russian incursions we've seen in recent days. Drones, jets, and Bloomberg today reported that some European diplomats traveled to Moscow to say if there are Russian jets in European airspace, they will not hesitate to shoot them down. What is Canada's position on how NATO should respond to these incursions going forward?
Excellent question because of the volatility in this area right now. I met with Mark Rutte yesterday, the Secretary General of NATO, and we were very careful in our conversation to lay out the fact that there is a process under the Washington Treaty, and it's important for that process to be followed. Article 4 for sure in terms of consultation, but also these are military decisions, and there is a process for military decisions to be made under the NATO guidelines and structure. And SACEUR in particular is fundamental in terms of the decision-making, not just on capabilities, of course, but the actual minute-by-minute decision-making. And so it would be imprudent for me to be preempting the decisions from a military standpoint that SACEUR would be making under the NATO framework. And I'm fully cognizant of these types of decisions, given that I was the Minister of National Defense of Canada for 2 years.
I was at the Council on Foreign Relations when the Prime Minister spoke, and he talked about secondary sanctions, and his counsel was that the international community should go quickly on those. What is that timeline as you see it in terms of imposing those sanctions on Russia?
Well, let's take a step back and ask why sanctions are even necessary at all. And that's because of the illegal and unjustifiable further invasion by Russia of Ukraine in 2022. The work that the international community has been doing to rally around Ukraine, Canada, for example, $22 billion on the table, the largest per capita donor, and still looking to do more. The first country to actually execute on a Pearl, which is the $500 million amount set by NATO. The work that we will do regarding sanctions continues. I met with Andrei Sybiha, the Ukrainian foreign minister, today to discuss this, as well as sovereign assets, as well as what we can do on sanctions. Canada, of course, has already put on the table 4,000 sanctions of individuals and entities. So this work continues. All options are always on the table. As host of the G7, I am working with my other G7 foreign ministers on Ukraine, on the Middle East, on Haiti, to ensure that we have an approach that is responsive to the seriousness of each of those situations.
I think of the delicacy of the calculus here as Canada tries to strengthen some of these relationships with China, with India, that have been strained in recent years, and these sanctions, of course, would hit those countries hardest. How does that complicate your thinking about the imposition of those sanctions?
Well, of course, we have to be very, very attentive to the situation in Ukraine and to provide as much support as possible across a number of lines of assistance. At the same time, we also have our bilateral relationships with India, with China. I'll be traveling to India, Singapore, and China in the coming weeks. And it's important for us as a country to execute on our Indo-Pacific strategy, to develop lines of trade while making sure that we are attendant to issues of domestic public safety and law enforcement.
Let me ask you about this moment and this meeting that you've been participating in. You heard the leader of the largest economy in the world effectively say that this body doesn't do anything. It was a rejection of multilateralism as we know it. How do you, I don't want to say pick up the pieces from that, but listen to that and plot a path forward here with the United Nations? What does this body, the liberal order, look like going forward here in light of what we heard from the President of the United States?
Well, I wish this interview was longer, actually, because you're really preempting my speech on Monday to the United Nations, which is, yes, we are in a time where multilateralism is under threat, where countries retreat towards protectionism and unilateralism. And the question is, how do we, as believers in institutions of a multilateral nature, react? What is our response? And of course, as a country that relies so deeply on trade, as a country that has benefited from the rules-based international order, whether it is defense and security, NATO, whether it is trade and commerce, WTO, whether it is the United Nations itself. Canada has benefited and prospered as well as contributed to the multilateral order. And the question before us now, in this moment of geopolitical tension and the retreat towards protectionism, is how do we maintain this order? And the question that I've been putting on the table at various sessions is that it is not the time for those of us who believe in multilateralism to retreat. It is the time for us to continue to offer the very best of what makes us domestically successful as well as internationally collaborative, and that is working within the multilateral order for the benefit of all. The work ahead of us is monumental, but it must be done. And in terms of President Trump's comments, there were aspects of his remarks that may be interpreted as you said, but there were other aspects where we can all agree. He spoke about the importance of peace. In this time where we are seeing more and more conflict, armed conflict, it is more important than ever to ensure that we are working towards peace on a multilateral basis.
Minister, thank you very much.